High pressure, yes, it's finally here and it's been bringing dry and fairly settled conditions across the UK over the past few days. Will it continue though? We'll find out in a few moments, but first let's take a look at what's been causing these conditions over the past couple of days. So this chart here for Monday at 9 o'clock is generally quite representative of the setup that we've seen persisting over the past couple of days. So we've had that area of high pressure roughly centred over the Baltic states, and that's been ridging across much of Western Central Europe and into Southern and Central Britain, leading to dry, sunny, but overnight frosty conditions for many places. Now further northwest we've seen that weather front linger over parts of northwestern Scotland and Northern Ireland, and that's been due to that area of low pressure which has roughly stayed in a similar location to the west of Ireland. Now it's getting to the time of year where many people are thinking about getting out and wanting to do some drilling, and this graph here shows on average the date when most drilling is done over the past few years for the Eastern England region. So you can generally see it's that last couple of weeks of March, first week of April when much of the time people are getting out and doing drilling. There is some year-to-year variability though, especially looking at 2018 when we had the beast from the east, and that pushed the drilling way back into April. 30th of April was on average the day when most drilling was done across Eastern England. So it is quite variable year to year, but generally we're around that sort of time when people are thinking about wanting to get out and do some drilling. So taking a look at the soil temperature, this is the 10 metre soil temperature for Marham in West Norfolk. Now 10 metres is a little bit deeper than most drilling is done, so closer to the surface you generally get warmer daytime temperatures and cooler nighttime temperatures, but overall the trends and the averages can be inferred as quite similar. So looking over the past couple of months, for January, February, that purple line, which is the 2020 daily average soil temperature for Marham, is well above the red line, which is the 2002 to 2020 average. So well above average soil temperatures through much of January and February, and that's been fairly similar over the past couple of weeks as well. You can see that purple line again above the red line, so above average soil temperatures over the past couple of weeks. But as this area of high pressure is built, we've seen overnight frost, so that has actually brought the soil temperatures down to just below average over the past few days. So turning chillier over the past couple of days has brought the soil temperatures down to below average, and there's potential for that to continue over the next few days. So we'll take a look at the forecast first and then come back to this graph and see how that's going to affect the soil temperatures going forward. So here's the jet stream at the minute to the northwest of the British Isles, fairly strong and quite active, and that's what's been bringing that cloud and rain to northwestern parts of Scotland and northern parts of Ireland. Further south though, we've been under that ridge of high pressure and it's been fairly quiet with the jet stream well to the north. You can see though over the next couple of days into the middle part of the week we begin to see a bit of an easterly, and that could actually bring some quite breezy conditions and a bit of rain to parts of southern and eastern England, but generally under this ridge of high pressure. Now by the weekend you can see that jet stream looping over Greenland, then coming back down from the north into the British Isles, and that's going to draw in some quite cold air down from further north across the British Isles, so turning quite cold into the weekend and the early part of next week, with the winds turning more to the north. Now taking a closer look, this is Wednesday, that area of high pressure again over the Baltic states, leading to dry and largely bright conditions for central and eastern England. That front still lingering into parts of northwestern Scotland and Western Ireland, bringing on and off spells of cloud and patchy rain. So not a huge amount of change through Wednesday, but I think into Thursday we are going to see this new area of high pressure out to the west begin to build, and then begin to build to the northwestern part of the British Isles. So most places keeping dry, that front generally turning patchier and easing, and there will be another overnight frost on Wednesday into Thursday, and then again Thursday into Friday for many southern and central areas with quite clear skies. Now moving ahead into Friday, after an early frost, that high pressure beginning to build to the northwest of the British Isles, so strengthening there, and we will see quite a strengthening northeasterly. You can see the tightening of the isobars. It's going to turn quite breezy across southern and central parts of Britain, and there was that little area of rain in the southeast which could develop during late Friday and into Saturday, so potential for a little bit of rain for some southeastern parts of Britain, but generally further northwest staying dry under the influence of that area of high pressure. So going back to the soil temperatures, we can see over the next few days with those clear skies we're going to see continued risk of frosts, I think, for the rest of this week, potentially into the weekend as well. So expecting that purple line to continue to stay slightly below the red line, soil temperatures slightly below average for the rest of this week. I don't think it's going to be anything extreme, not down to any of those extremes. Generally it's going to be quite close to average, but just below average to bear in mind if there's anyone that's going to be planning to do any drilling over the next few days. Could be slightly below average in the soil temperatures. Now, another thing which a lot of people have been asking about on the phones is wanting to get out and do some spraying. So the weekend, although we had quite sunny and dry weather, it was quite breezy. We had quite a keen east to southeasterly wind. Now, over the next few days, it looks like those winds are going to ease as the high pressure stays built and the winds turn more to the southeast at times. So generally a reasonable opportunities for spraying, these green colours indicating winds less than 10 miles per hour and dry conditions. So plenty of opportunities during the middle part of the week to get out and do some spraying. But as that northeasterly develops towards the end of the week, turns quite breezy, looks like there's going to be a few only limited opportunities by the weekend. But earlier on this week should be plenty of ideal opportunities to do some spraying. So looking ahead to the end of the weekend, this is a snapshot of how things are expected to look for Sunday. That area of high pressure still persisting to the south of Iceland with a northeasterly flow over the British Isles, and that's actually going to bring some wintry showers in off the North Sea, particularly to central and eastern parts of England. It should be further dry parts of northwestern Scotland and Northern Ireland, but scattered showers elsewhere through Sunday. So turning a little bit more unsettled by the end of the weekend and into the first part of next week. Now, there is some uncertainty for the first part of next week as to exactly how that high pressure is going to develop. So some models draping that area of high pressure across northern Britain, extending dry conditions there, but a bit of a stronger easterly further south could bring some showers or a few spots of rain. And there's quite a developing deep area of low pressure to the west of Iberia. Now, some of the models are strengthening that high pressure out to the west of the British Isles, making it become more dominant, and that low further south is much less developed and barely there at all, really. So depending on how that high develops into the early part of next week, it could influence how we see conditions change. But generally it looks to be high pressure dominated, but slight changes in the centre and positioning of the high could have impacts further east on the wind strength and wind direction as well. So one to keep an eye on during the early part of next week, and the best way to do that is keep in touch with our forecasters. Now, they're available every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. On that phone number there, 09065777675. So if you've got any questions about the forecast, anything at all, give them a call. They're on top of all the latest models, all the locations that you need, and just ask any questions. They'll be able to sort you out for the forecast for anything you need. Now, looking a bit further ahead for the next 10 days or so, this is the rainfall in an ensemble forecast. So it's a model that's run several times going out forward in time. So you can see over the next few days through until Friday, it looks to be pretty much dry. No models really bringing any rainfall. This is for Bedford as an example for central eastern England. So dry over the next few days, but you can see by the weekend and into the early part of next week, those showers that I was talking about becoming more of a signal there, and into the early part of next week and beyond as well. So I think becoming a little bit more unsettled after this weekend, but there are some differences in rainfall. You see some models bringing 6 or 7 mil on any given day, but generally the amounts are lower. I think the average of these is sort of generally below a mil. So generally small amounts. You couldn't rule out a bit more from a few heavier showers or spells of rain, but generally, although we are going to see some rain after the weekend, it doesn't look like there's going to be massive amounts of it around. Now, taking a look at the temperature, this is the 850 millibar temperature, and it's generally a good representative of the air mass that's over us. So you can see at the minute, relatively mild air over us through the rest of this week, but towards the weekend and into the early part of next week, those temperatures plummet as the northerly winds introduce that colder air, and there's relatively good agreement between all the ensemble members of that going forward into the early part of next week. So a cold snap over the weekend and into next week. After that, looks like we might begin to see a pickup in temperatures. You can see at this point there's not a huge amount of agreement between many of the model runs. You can see they all have a slight upward trend, and that is bringing that average up. So not a huge amount of agreement, but generally does look that beyond that we will see a slow increase in temperatures going forward for the next couple of weeks as well. Now, taking a look at the next 3 weeks ahead or so, this is the first week of April. That area of high pressure still building out to the northwest of the UK, centred to the south of Iceland, ridging across Britain, northwestern Europe. Lower than average pressure further south over the Mediterranean parts of southern Europe, and that's generally going to lead to above average rainfall for some of these locations. So wetter than average across southern Europe, but with that high pressure out to the northwest of Britain, generally drier than average for much of western and northwestern Europe. Now, you will see down the east coast of Scotland and England those rainfall amounts closer to average, and that's with those showers coming in off the North Sea. So wouldn't be surprised if actually some places are quite wet along the east coast and perhaps a little bit further inland as well, with those showers coming in from the sea. Now, temperature-wise, with those northerly winds, we're going to see fairly cold temperatures across much of Europe, especially central areas where there's going to be fairly widespread overnight frost, subdued daytime temperatures for central southern England by the time we get into that sort of thing, looking at below average temperatures for many places as well. So turning colder into the first week of April. Beyond that, there's a very weak signal that high pressure could continue to persist out to the west of Britain. It is quite a weak signal though, and in terms of rainfall, there's no real strong signal. It actually looks like over some of the western hills, rainfall could be just above average. Generally though, over northwestern Europe, there is slight hints of something slightly drier than average, and then perhaps for much of the UK as well. But at this stage it is quite a weak signal. Temperature-wise, still staying quite chilly across southern and parts of central Europe, but we do see a pickup in the temperatures over Scandinavia and parts of eastern Europe, with some slightly above average temperatures during that second week of April. Now, looking ahead to the last week of April, it looks like there could be a slight change in the regime. These blue colours here signifying lower than average pressure, so becoming a little bit more unsettled, I think, into that third week of April, with low pressure generally to the north of the British Isles and the north of Europe. So in terms of temperatures, still milder than average further east. It looks like some of that could persist there, but close to average or colder than average temperatures across parts of Western Europe, as we perhaps see winds still being from the north or northwest through that third week of April. In terms of rainfall, with that unsettled flavour, it looks like actually it could be wetter than average for many parts of Europe, especially further west and western facing coastal areas. Now, there's not a hugely strong signal at this stage, but I think it is a hint that something a bit more unsettled could be pushing in towards the end of April. So one to watch, but it looks like at the minute perhaps slightly wetter than average during that third week of April. So to summarise, generally settled over England and Wales for the next few days. There is the risk of frosts most nights this week and into the weekend as well, but it will turn colder by day during the weekend and into the early part of next week, with temperatures in some central and eastern areas perhaps down to 5 or 6 degrees. We'll see the introduction of some showers as well, especially for eastern and central areas. And then into the last week of April, looking further ahead, it looks like there could be a hint of something a little bit more unsettled coming back into the forecast for that last part of April. So I want to keep an eye on as to how that progresses over the next few weeks. But thanks for watching. As ever, if you'd like to leave any comments, find us on social media or leave a comment on the video below.